Welcome to Winning Paths, the Irish Field Archery monthly podcast, where victory is an adventure mapped with humour, guided by wisdom, and fueled by epic tales. Whether you're here to crush goals, sharpen your mindset, or just enjoy a good laugh, you're in the right place. Subscribe now, and let's tackle life's challenges together, with a wink, a grin, and a strategy that's anything but ordinary. Draw your bow, take aim, and let's hit those targets. Our material is original, born from our intellectual labour and countless hours spent researching, writing, and publishing. Each episode reflects our deep experience as writers and journalists, delivering content that's as insightful as it is engaging. Check for more at tfam.ie. In the ancient land of Egypt, where the Nile snaked its way through the desert like a shimmering lifeline, and the gods watched over the affairs of men with a mixture of indifference and mischief, there lived two brothers whose tale would become a lesson in the unpredictability of fate. Their names were Anpu and Bata, and though they shared the same blood, their paths would take them through the darkest valleys of betrayal, the strangest twists of divine intervention, and ultimately to a bond stronger than even the gods themselves could break. Anpu, the elder, was a man of strength and responsibility. He had the build of a warrior and the heart of a farmer, tending to the fields with the same care he might have shown in battle. His younger brother, Bata, was full of youth and vigour, known for his agility and sharp mind. Together they worked the land, raising cattle that grazed on the lush banks of the Nile and farming the fertile soil that the river's floods blessed each year. Anpu was married to a woman of striking beauty, though her beauty was marred by a cunning heart. While Anpu toiled in the fields, his wife often found herself gazing at Bata with a desire that had more to do with lust than love. Bata, though young, was not blind to her advances, but he was a man of honour, or perhaps simply too fearful of his elder brother's wrath to act on any of the provocations she cast his way. One day, when Anpu had gone to market, his wife seized the opportunity to make her desires clear. She approached Bata, draped in finery that left little to the imagination, and attempted to seduce him with words as sweet as honey and as venomous as a serpent. Bata, horrified by her audacity, rejected her outright. The rejection stung, and in that moment her affection for Bata curdled into something far more dangerous: hatred. When Anpu returned home, his wife, her pride deeply wounded, concocted a tale so vile that it would have made even the most deceitful gods blush. She threw herself at Anpu's feet, her eyes brimming with tears, and claimed that Bata had tried to force himself upon her. She painted a picture of herself as the virtuous wife, resisting the advances of a man who had lost all sense of decency. Anpu, his love for his wife blinding him to the truth, believed every word. In a fury, Anpu seized his bow, a weapon he had used many times to protect his home and his cattle, and set off to find his brother, determined to end the life of the man he believed had betrayed him. Bata, unaware of the storm brewing in his brother's heart, was in the fields tending to the cattle when he saw Anpu approaching with murder in his eyes. Realizing the danger, Bata prayed to the god Rivalry, pleading for his life. The god, whether moved by Bata's desperation or simply in the mood to play a trick on the mortal world, responded swiftly. A lake, deep and wide, filled with crocodiles, appeared between the two brothers, preventing Anpu from crossing. Bata, standing on the opposite shore, shouted to his brother, begging him to listen, to understand that he was innocent of the charges laid against him. In a gesture that would prove the sincerity of his words, Bata took a knife and, in a moment of agonizing self-sacrifice, severed his own manhood. He threw it into the lake, where a catfish devoured it, a symbol of his rejection of all earthly desires and a testament to his innocence. Anpu, seeing the lengths to which his brother had gone to prove his honesty, began to doubt the words of his wife. Anpu, his heart heavy with guilt and confusion, listened as Bata explained his plan to leave the village and start anew in the Valley of Cedars, a place far from the reach of those who had wronged him. Bata told Anpu that he would place his heart in the top of a cedar tree's blossom, so that if the tree were ever cut down, Anpu would be able to find it and bring him back to life. Bata also left Anpu with a warning: if ever a jar of beer should froth over unexpectedly, it would be a sign that Bata needed his brother's help. With that, Bata left, and Anpu returned home, where he confronted his wife with the truth. In a fit of rage and sorrow, he killed her, ridding himself of the deceit that had nearly driven him to kill his own brother. But Anpu's actions did little to ease his conscience, and he spent his days haunted by the knowledge of how close he had come to destroying the one person who had always stood by his side. Meanwhile, in the Valley of Cedars, Bata built a new life. The land was wild and untamed, but Bata was resourceful, and he soon made a home for himself among the towering trees. The gods, watching from above, decided to take pity on him. They called upon Khnum, the divine potter who had shaped mankind on his wheel, to create a wife for Bata, a woman of such beauty that her very existence was a gift from the gods. This new wife brought Bata comfort and happiness, and for a time it seemed that his troubles were behind him. But news of her beauty spread far and wide, until it reached the ears of the pharaoh himself. The pharaoh, accustomed to getting whatever he desired, sent his men to bring Bata's wife to his palace. She, sensing the power and wealth of the pharaoh, did not resist, and soon found herself in the luxury of the royal court. In the palace, Bata's wife, though surrounded by luxury, could not shake the memory of her husband. But instead of yearning for his return, she sought to rid herself of him once and for all. She whispered to the pharaoh that the cedar tree where Bata had hidden his heart held a great power, and that he should cut it down to ensure that no man, not even Bata, could challenge him. The pharaoh, intrigued by the idea of possessing such power, ordered the tree to be felled. As the cedar came crashing down, far away in the Valley of Cedars, Bata felt his life slip away. His body crumpled to the ground, lifeless, as the connection to his heart was severed. Back in the village, Anpu, sitting alone in his home, noticed something strange. A jar of beer began to froth over, spilling its contents onto the floor. Realizing what this meant, Anpu set out immediately for the Valley of Cedars, knowing that his brother was in grave danger. For 7 long years he searched the valley, combing through the underbrush and sifting through the remains of the fallen tree, until at last he found the heart of Bata. With the care and precision of an archer stringing his bow, Anpu placed the heart in a bowl of cold water, praying to the gods to bring his brother back to life. The heart began to beat, and soon Bata's body was restored, as though death had been nothing more than a passing dream. Resurrected but still driven by a desire for justice, Bata transformed himself into a mighty bull and made his way to the pharaoh's palace. His wife, recognizing the bull for what it truly was, begged the pharaoh to have it sacrificed so that she might eat its liver, a delicacy she claimed would bring her unparalleled beauty. The pharaoh, eager to please his new queen, agreed, and the bull was slaughtered. But as Bata's blood soaked into the earth, 2 Persea trees sprang up, tall and strong, their branches reaching toward the heavens. Bata, now within the trees, whispered once more to his wife, reminding her of the bond they had shared and the betrayal she had wrought. Fearing the power of these trees, the wife convinced the pharaoh to have them cut down and made into fine furniture for the palace. But as the trees were felled, a splinter found its way into her mouth, and she became pregnant. The child she bore was none other than Bata himself, reborn and ready to take his rightful place in the world. When the pharaoh died, the child, now a man, was crowned king. This time Bata was no longer content to live in the shadows or be the victim of others' schemes. He ruled with wisdom and strength, ensuring that justice was served in every corner of the land. His first act as king was to appoint his elder brother Anpu as crown prince, a position that not only honored Anpu's loyalty, but also ensured that the bond between them could never be broken again. But Bata did not forget the skills he had learned as a young man, especially the art of archery, which had once saved him from his brother's wrath. He established grand contests where the finest archers in the land would compete for glory and the favor of the king. Anpu, despite his age, still held the bow with grace, his arrows flying straight and true. The brothers would often compete side by side, their rivalry now one of respect and camaraderie rather than suspicion and anger. The image of the 2 brothers drawing their bows in unison became a symbol of unity and strength throughout Egypt. It was a reminder that, just as in archery, life required a steady hand, a clear eye, and the wisdom to know when to release the arrow and when to hold back. The image of the two brothers, side by side, bows drawn and arrows ready, became more than just a symbol of their personal bond. It was a representation of the unity that can be forged through understanding, reconciliation, and mutual respect. The archery contests they held were not just about skill. They were about balance, precision, and the delicate art of knowing when to release the arrow and when to hold back. Bata, having gone through the trials of life, death, and rebirth, understood that the arrow's journey from bow to target was much like life itself, full of uncertainty, requiring both strength and finesse. Anpu, on the other hand, had learned the hard lesson of trust, realizing that doubt and suspicion could easily lead one astray, just as an arrow can be misled by a faulty aim or a gust of wind. As the years passed, the brothers ruled Egypt with wisdom, their story serving as a reminder to all who heard it, that true strength lies not just in physical power or cunning, but in the ability to forgive, to seek justice, and to move forward despite the wounds of the past. The story of Anpu and Bata, with all its divine interventions, betrayals, and resurrections, became a legend throughout Egypt, a tale passed down from generation to generation. It was told not just as a cautionary tale about the dangers of deceit and the power of forgiveness, but also as a celebration of the resilience of the human spirit. In time, the lessons of the brothers were immortalized in the stars, with constellations named after them, their story written across the night sky for all to see. And so, even as the sands of time buried the great cities of Egypt, the story of Anpu and Bata lived on, a testament to the enduring power of brotherhood, the wisdom of the gods, and the importance of aiming true, both in life and in archery. As for the archery contests, they became a tradition that outlived even the reign of the brothers, with generations of Egyptians taking up the bow to test their skills, each one hoping to find the same balance and precision that had defined the lives of Anpu and Bata. The story of the brothers was a reminder that in the end it is not the bow that makes the archer, but the heart that guides the arrow. And so, with their story told and their legacy secure, Anpu and Bata faded into the mists of history, their tale a bright thread woven into the vast fabric of Egyptian myth and legend, forever reminding us that, no matter how dark the night, the dawn will always come, and with it, the chance to begin anew. Our journey now brings us to Bangor, a town nestled on the rugged coast of Northern Ireland, where the air is thick with the scent of salt and the whispers of old stories. Here, the lines between the living and the dead blur, and the ancient powers that once ruled the land still cast long shadows over the hearts of men. As we turn the page, we exchange the warmth of the Nile's embrace for the chill of the Lough, and the lessons of brotherhood learned in the Egyptian sands find new resonance in the tale of the O'Flaherty brothers, Seamus and Liam, whose tragic fate reminds us that while the setting may change, the threads of pride, folly, and the wrath of the gods are woven through the fabric of every age. In the year 1637, when the town of Bangor was but a burgeoning port under the watchful eye of Sir James Hamilton, the air hung thick with the scent of salt from the sea, mingling with the heady promise of prosperity. The newly constructed customs house stood tall as a sentinel over the bustling harbour, a monument to the town's growing importance in Northern Ireland, and a beacon to the ships that sailed into the embrace of Belfast Lough. The townsfolk, a curious blend of native Irish and newly settled Scots, went about their daily lives with the rugged resilience that had been forged in the fires of centuries of toil and conflict. Yet, beneath the surface of this seemingly prosperous town, whispers of old stories lingered, tales of the unseen, the unforgiven, and the forgotten spirits that still roamed the ancient hills. Bangor, a place now awash in the clamour of trade and commerce, held a past steeped in legend. Long before the Scots arrived, before the merchants and traders, the land had been the domain of ancient spirits and powerful beings, remnants of a time when the Tuatha De Danann roamed freely across the hills and valleys. Among these spirits was the Cailleach, the hag of winter, both feared and revered in equal measure. She was said to wander the forests and hills, her presence bringing death to the unworthy and blessings to those who honoured the old ways. But as the town grew and the new ways of commerce and conquest took hold, the old ways were forgotten, and with them the respect for the ancient powers that once held sway over the land. Seamus and Liam O'Flaherty, the central figures in this tragic tale, were as different as two brothers could be, yet bound together by blood and the burdens of inheritance. Seamus the elder was a man of the earth, strong, stubborn, and unyielding, a figure who might have been carved from the very stones of the land. He believed in the power of his own hands, in the sweat of his brow, and in the sanctity of hard labour. Liam, on the other hand, was quick-witted and clever, always looking for the easy way out, though his schemes often led him into deeper waters than he could swim. Together they inherited a small farm on the outskirts of Bangor, a place where they could have lived in relative peace, had they not been cursed with the twin flaws of pride and arrogance that so often accompany ambition. The trouble began, as it often does in such tales, with a careless act of disrespect, an act born of the hubris that blinds men to the forces that they cannot see or understand. In their quest to expand their farm and increase their yield, encroached upon a patch of land that was said to be sacred, a grove of ancient trees twisted and gnarled, their roots deep in the earth and their branches heavy with the weight of centuries. This was a place where the Cailleach herself was known to dwell, a place where the veil between the worlds was thin, and where those who trespassed did so at their peril. The locals, who still remembered the old stories, avoided the grove, knowing well the tales of those who had disappeared within its shadows, never to be seen again. But Seamus, in his hubris, dismissed these tales as mere superstition, the idle talk of old women and fools. He ordered the trees to be cut down, the land cleared, and the soil tilled, confident that his hard work would yield a bountiful harvest. Liam, always eager to please his brother, went along with the plan, though a deep unease settled over him as they worked. The old woman who lived nearby, Granny McAllister, a figure as ancient and gnarled as the trees themselves, warned them to leave the grove untouched, her voice trembling with the weight of her years and the knowledge of the old ways. But her words fell on deaf ears, and the brothers pressed on, oblivious to the dark forces they were awakening. It was on the night that the last tree fell that the Cailleach's curse took root in the soil of their lives. The air grew cold, and the wind howled through the town, rattling windows and doors with a fury that spoke of more than just the weather. The townsfolk whispered of strange happenings, cattle found dead in their fields, their bodies twisted and broken in ways that defied explanation, crops withering overnight, and strange lights seen in the sky above the old grove. But the O'Flaherty brothers, blinded by their ambition and their belief in the power of their own hands, carried on with their work, confident that their hard labour would shield them from whatever shadows lurked in the corners of their world. But the Cailleach was not one to be so easily dismissed, nor was she a spirit to be forgotten. She waited, biding her time, watching as the brothers' fortunes grew, and then, when the time was right, she struck with a vengeance that would echo through the generations. One by one the brothers' animals began to die, first the chickens, then the sheep, and finally the prize bull, a massive beast that had been the pride of Seamus's herd, and a symbol of his strength and success. The bull, as strong and stubborn as Seamus himself, was found dead in the field one morning, its body contorted in a way that defied the laws of nature, its eyes wide with a terror that spoke of unseen horrors. But the bull's death was just the beginning, the first crack in the foundation of their lives. The Cailleach's true vengeance was yet to come, and it would strike at the heart of the O'Flaherty family in ways that would tear them apart. For you see, the Cailleach was not just a bringer of death. She was also a taker of senses, a spirit who could strip a person of their wits as easily as she could take their life. Years before, when Granny McAllister's daughter Bridget was just a child, she had wandered too close to the sacred grove, her innocent curiosity drawing her into the shadows where the Cailleach waited. The Cailleach, angered by the child's intrusion, had taken her senses as punishment, leaving Bridget beautiful but devoid of wit or wisdom. Bridget grew up as the village beauty, admired by all but understood by none. She was a flower without fragrance, a shell without a pearl, her beauty a hollow echo of the woman she might have been. And so it was that when the Cailleach's curse fell upon the O'Flaherty brothers, Brigid became an unwitting pawn in the old hag's game. The Cailleach, knowing that Seamus was proud of his strength and Liam of his cleverness, sought to turn their virtues into vices, to twist their pride into the very thing that would destroy them. As the Cailleach's curse began to take hold, another strange occurrence began to plague the O'Flaherty household. Roger, the old dog who had been a faithful companion for years, suddenly turned against Liam. The once loyal hound, who had been as gentle as a lamb, now growled and snapped at Liam without provocation, chasing him from the house and harrying him at every turn. No one could understand why Roger, who had been a faithful friend, had become so vicious toward Liam. But the truth, as it turned out, was far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Roger, in his old age, had become attuned to the presence of the Cailleach. He sensed her malice, her desire to destroy the brothers, and in his simple canine way he tried to warn Liam. But Liam, ever dismissive of the dog's behavior, only grew more frustrated and fearful. He began to believe that Roger was possessed, that the dog had been taken over by some malevolent spirit sent to torment him. In his desperation, Liam took to carrying a stick with him at all times, ready to defend himself against the dog's attacks. The Cailleach, watching from the shadows, delighted in the growing discord between the brothers. She whispered to Roger in the dead of night, filling his mind with visions of Liam as a threat, as the source of all his suffering. The dog, driven mad by these dark whispers, became relentless in his pursuit of Liam, and the once close bond between the brothers began to fray under the strain. It was on a dark and stormy night, when the wind howled like a banshee, and the rain lashed the windows with the fury of a woman scorned, that the Cailleach decided to deliver the final blow. The brothers were in their home, the fire burning low in the hearth, the shadows dancing on the walls like ghosts of the past. Roger, sensing something amiss, began to growl, his hackles raised, his eyes fixed on the door. Liam, tired of the dog's constant hostility, shouted at him to be quiet, but Roger's growls only grew louder, more insistent, as if he knew what was coming. And then, with a sound like the cracking of ice on a frozen lake, the door burst open, and the Cailleach herself stepped into the room. Her presence was a cold wind, a chill that cut to the bone, a darkness that swallowed the light. Seamus, ever the man of action, reached for his axe, but found his arms frozen, his muscles locked in place by a force stronger than anything he had ever encountered. Liam, too, was paralyzed with fear, unable to move, unable to speak, his heart pounding in his chest like a drumbeat of doom. The Cailleach smiled, a grim, joyless smile that spoke of centuries of suffering and an anger that had festered in the darkness. Her voice, when she spoke, was the sound of dead leaves rustling in the wind, of stones tumbling down a mountainside, of the earth itself groaning under the weight of its history. She spoke of the grove, of the trees that had stood for centuries, of the land that had been sacred long before the O'Flahertys had laid claim to it. She spoke of their arrogance, their pride, and their folly in thinking they could take what was not theirs to take, in believing that the power of the old gods had faded with time. As she spoke, the fire in the hearth began to die, the flames flickering and then vanishing, leaving only darkness and the cold that seeped into their bones. Roger, the old dog, whimpered and slunk back into the shadows, his eyes wide with terror, his body trembling as he sensed the end approaching. And then, with a gesture as casual as a mother brushing hair from her child's face, the Cailleach reached out and took the life from Seamus. He crumpled to the floor, his body nothing more than an empty husk, his spirit snuffed out like a candle in the wind. Liam, witnessing his brother's death, felt a cold hand close around his heart, squeezing the life from him with a force that left him gasping for breath. The Cailleach turned her gaze to him, her eyes burning with an ancient fury, the fury of a goddess wronged, of a power disrespected. But she did not kill him, not yet. Instead, she cursed him with a life of endless torment, a life where he would be haunted by the memory of this night, by the sight of his brother's lifeless body on the cold floor, by the sound of Roger's growls echoing in the darkness, and by the Cailleach's voice whispering in his mind, reminding him of the folly that had led to his downfall. And so Liam fled Bangor, driven mad by the curse, a man haunted by his past, by the sins of his pride and his arrogance. He wandered the land, a shadow of his former self, never finding peace, never escaping the Cailleach's reach, her voice always in his ear, her presence always at his back, a dark shadow that loomed over his every step. As for Roger, the old dog, he was never seen again, though some say he followed Liam, a faithful companion to the end, while others whisper that he returned to the Cailleach, his purpose fulfilled, his soul claimed by the darkness that had consumed him. In the years that followed, the tale of the O'Flaherty brothers and their tragic downfall became a story that was whispered in hushed tones around Bangor's hearths and inns, a story that carried the weight of a warning, a tale of hubris and tragedy, of old gods and ancient curses, of a dog named Roger who knew more than any man ever would. The townsfolk who once dismissed the old legends as mere superstition now paid homage to the sacred groves, leaving offerings of bread and milk to appease the spirits that dwelled within, the spirits that had been awakened by the brothers' folly. Granny McAllister, who had warned the brothers of the Cailleach's wrath, lived to see her warnings fulfilled. She became a revered figure in the town, a woman whose knowledge of the old ways was sought by those who feared the unseen forces that still lingered in the shadows, the forces that had been awakened by the brothers' arrogance. Her daughter, Bridget, remained a tragic figure, beautiful but empty, a reminder of the price of offending the ancient powers, a price that had been paid in blood and tears. As for the Cailleach, her presence was felt in every cold wind that swept through the town, in every storm that lashed the shores of Belfast Lough, a reminder that the old gods were not dead, that their power had not faded with time, that they still walked the land, watching and waiting. The people of Bangor learned to fear her, to respect her, and to remember the tale of the brothers who had dared to defy her, a tale that was passed down through the generations, a tale that became a part of Bangor's rich weaving of folklore, a story that reminded the people that some things are better left undisturbed, that the past is never truly gone, and that the old gods are always watching, always waiting. For in the land of Northern Ireland, where the line between the living and the dead is as thin as the mist that clings to the hills, there are some stories that are not just tales, they are warnings etched into the very fabric of the land, a part of the earth itself. And woe to those who forget them, woe to those who dare to defy the old gods, the gods who still walk the land, the gods who still watch and wait, biding their time, waiting for the moment to remind the world of their power, of their wrath,